everyone, and welcome to this episode of ctl-alt-del-church. With me today is Lorraine Darlow. Hi, Lorraine.
Hi.
It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
What is it that you do at the moment?
Okay, so I'm the National Learning and Development Coordinator for the Methodist Church in Scotland.
Excellent. That's a very small patch.
Very, very small. Just a tiny region.
So what does that entail? What kind of stuff do you get involved in?
A whole variety of stuff. We work with the missions team and the ministries team to basically support learning and development across the UK. And so that would include kind of basic stuff like line management training and safeguarding training, which would be fairly generic kind of things. And then more specific things within Methodism, like church stewards and circuit steward training, training and being a trustee, all that kind of stuff about keeping a charity running well, and then all the other ministry stuff for lay ministry, children's, youth, family, intergenerational ministry, local preachers, worship leaders, and ministerial formation. So supporting people through training, probation, and then ongoing professional development. So things like community of practices and supervision, and a whole host of stuff like that, as well as the kind of development stuff, which is probably things around pioneer ministry, church planting, community development, all that kind of stuff. So basically anything that falls under learning and development.
Wow, that's a huge remit and really varied, which in some ways I guess is brilliant because it gives you lots of variety, but on the other hand, that's a huge remit.
It's huge. It's incredibly huge, and we used to work in teams of specialisms. So there would be in each region there would be somebody that was specialist in ministries, somebody that was more specialist in discipleship and evangelism, somebody that was coming from a children's or youth background. But now we tend to work a bit differently, and because of how we work now online, of course, we're not even limited to our own teams within a region. I can work with somebody in Cornwall just as easily as I can with somebody along the road in this new world that we find ourselves in. So the actual pool of expertise that we have is substantial now. We have a fairly large team across the UK, and drawing on the expertise of connectional team as well within children, youth and families, within the missions team or the ministries team. So we've got real access to folks really easily now. I don't need to jump on a 5 o'clock train to go down to London for a meeting. It's so different now. And I think we've cut out so much travel and created so much space for more kind of natural rhythms that are healthy. Not to mention that we're playing our part in saving the environment by not actually, using so much time travelling, whether it be in cars or public transport, and financially it's much better.
And it means that we can get lots of people from lots of different places together. I think one of the things that you asked me to do was to be involved in something that you were running for ministers across the summer, where you were kind of gathering them together, as you said, as a community of practice. These people who are doing notionally the same job, but obviously in very different contexts all across the country, to think about what on earth is going on here. What is this? Because we've been plunged into this new reality where all of the things that we kind of took for granted have changed in some way. Even for churches that have kind of gone back to being open a little bit, they're still not the same. So what did you do, and why? What kind of things did you look at, and why did you think that was important?
Okay, so we had been kind of thinking about developing a community of practice to support ministers across the region anyway. And of course, when COVID hit, that kind of paused everything that we were planning. But very quickly, through the conversations that we were having with ministers, there was a real need to kind of stop and reflect on, so who are we and what are we supposed to be about? Because I think one of the things that is apparent for ministers these days is that they have to wear so many different hats. They have to manage staff, they have to manage safeguarding, they have to manage a whole host of things. And often the stuff that they're passionate about is sometimes pushed to the side, and they have to, do what they need to do on a Sunday or a midweek small group or a funeral, whatever it might be. And they don't often get the chance to kind of step back and reflect. And it's maybe not been, until fairly recently, it's maybe not been a big part of ministerial formation as they underwent it some years ago. So they're not in that flow of kind of reflecting on practice and, reviewing what they do with peers. And so we decided that we would ask some key questions about just now, starting with, so who are you right now and what are you thinking? How are you looking after yourself? Because for many ministers, they went, oh, what do I do? I don't have a building. I don't have people demanding of me. What does my ministry look like? Or even for some, do I have a ministry now? And some ministers, and I'm sure not just in the denomination that I'm working for, but I had conversations across the board. People were going, ministers are kind of going, I don't know how to explore my vocation in this context. Never mind actually develop and thrive through this thing. And some felt kind of de-skilled, that they were all of a sudden in a context that they weren't equipped for. Some felt excited and that they had been given a new canvas to explore, and everything in between. So we wanted to make sure that we were having conversations about, are you looking after yourself? No, you do not need to respond every minute of the day with some new idea to help everybody through this. You actually need to just be in there's a great phrase going about just now, we're not all in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm. And, it's that kind of, you are in this thing as much as everybody else. So we need to do this well. We need to model this well. So we kind of started there, and then we asked questions like, so what's God doing in this time? Yeah. Are we actually in a place to listen? Or are we just, running about like headless chickens trying to respond quickly without actually stopping to think and reflect well? And then we asked, how are you understanding yourself as a minister, and how are you understanding how your vocation may be changing? And obviously all the kind of stuff like, so what does that mean? How do we support you now and going forwards? And how do you begin to reshape ministry for a changing context? I think that was one of the biggies. If you've shaped your ministry and you've supported people in very particular ways for a long time, because the context kind of feels the same, whether it's a rural context or an inner city context, there's stuff that kind of stays the same, but all of a sudden it was brand new. And so trying to think through what that might look like. And I'm sure it's like this with, anybody who goes to church regularly. You get so familiar with how you exist as a church community, as a faith community, the stuff that you do, the words that you use, the rituals that you have. And you never actually understand anything different unless you go and visit. Yeah. You go and experience it. So for many folks, whether they were ordained or lay, they didn't know what other things looked like, because quite simply they had never gone and really visited.
Yeah. There's this assumption that all churches are the same, and they're never the same.
No,
I think
no.
I used to enjoy that when somebody would invite you to go and lead worship, and you would ask them, what do you do? And they look at you blankly as if to say, well, we do the same as everyone else. And whether it's, really kind of simple procedural things, almost like, do you stand at the beginning when somebody brings the Bible in, or do you not? Is it already there? how do I get from where I'm supposed to where I'm supposed to be? Is there a microphone? You know, how do you collect the offering? Is there one? All that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, we were in a time where we were exploring ideas around transitioning and change anyway, but at least within a context that people understood. But to be then in a place where we were talking about what does that look like online? And there was a need, I think, for folks to reproduce what they were doing in the physical sense online. And I mean, we could talk forever about that and the whys and wherefores of whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. But one of the other things that we included was some reflection around trauma and how do we understand trauma, and how was it that different people were experiencing the same thing differently? Why is it that some people were scared and isolated and bereft in so many ways, and yet others were thriving and excited and couldn't get enough of this new thing? And so we did some thinking around dealing with trauma and supporting people through trauma and what we might learn about ourselves in these kind of situations.
That's a really interesting. Can I stop at that point and can I chat a wee bit about that? Because people imagine that trauma is big and you know, it affects you in a way that is massive. You know, so a traumatic event is something that's sudden, that it's unexpected, that it's incredibly painful in some way, whether that's physically or emotionally or whatever. And so to talk about, you know, we're experiencing trauma. Well, I'm sitting in my house. Everything is, you know, everything's all right. So. You know, that I think even just to say it to some people, that, you know, actually what we're experiencing together is a traumatic experience. People don't think about that. Yeah. You know, and some people, and we all react to trauma differently, as you've said. Some people react by doing loads of stuff and trying to, you know, busy themselves through it because, you know, we're in a crisis and I've got to be busy and there's people to help and all that kind of stuff. And other people just sit and have no idea what to do. And as you said, there'll be people kind of in between, you know, who are kind of just trying to get by every day, but wondering why do I feel like this?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't understand why I feel. You know, I haven't read a book in 8 months, and I usually read quite a lot. And every time I sit down to read a book, I'm kind of like, you know, that's part of that traumatic response. Do you know what I mean? I just don't have the headspace for it. Yeah. So to speak to people about that is really important, I think. Absolutely. And I think, you know, people experience trauma physically, mentally, and all sorts of emotionally. And I think some ministers feel that when there's a crisis, they have to be the person with the answers or the strong person that other people are looking to. And that's just not the case. You know, one of the things we kept coming back to again and again was that we are all experiencing this. You have the right to experience it the way you're experiencing it. You don't need to be the person that's holding everything together. And quite frankly, you know, if you can't do church online, then you don't do church online. Yeah. If you can't open the building because it's only you that can do a deep clean every week because everybody else is shielded, you know, you don't open the building. You're not going to get a big gold medal for doing this stuff. Let's step back and think sensibly and theologically about where are we at and what is God saying? What do we need to be up to in this season? And I think for many, it gave them a sense of connection to colleagues that were spread across, you know, big geographical area. And it gave them access to conversation with folk that were in the same situation. Yeah. That was so important. Because I think, you know, we live in, whether it's in the church world or not, we live in with these kind of lenses on that says, oh, everybody else is doing better than I am. You know, everybody seems to be going out and doing this, but I'm not. And we've got this perception actually that
that we might struggle with things, but other people don't. And it's just not true. It's certainly not true in churches. And sometimes we can be very kind of stiff up our lip, or we need to say that we're okay. And that's just it's not authentic. It's not real. So I think that was really helpful in just spending that time, having that rhythm of, so where are we at? What are we looking at? What's a question that we want to explore? And seeing how we went. We finished up actually that session. Now you came and did a session thinking about change and shape of contemporary culture and how we respond to that. And the last one we did was with Don Allen, who is the lead healthcare chaplain for Greater Glasgow and Clyde. And a lot of the things that Don shared about our work just really resonated with all the ministers, because it's such a similar but different environment. But she talked about the sense of trauma and transition and so many things, and how we look after ourselves personally and professionally. The using tools like professional supervision and having communities of practice so that we can share and support and learn together in ways that are helpful, reflecting on the reality that we find ourselves in. So that was really good, and we've kind of taken a pause for December, and we'll kind of come back to it in January, thinking about how might we do more next year. We might not do something every month. We might go quarterly. We don't know yet, but the whole point is kind of responding to the ministers that we have and seeing what we might do to support them. And we have various other communities of practice as well, equally trying to do similar things, connecting people up, encouraging them to share and reflect, share stories, share the reality of what work and ministry is like, and to kind of plan and pray together about what might this look like if it goes this way, or how could I help you if you do, and so that learning is constant and is rooted in their own practice. I think it gives people such permission to explore and fail. We need to be able to experiment, and I don't know why we've got this inbuilt thing that we can only do something if we can make it a success, and if we can guarantee it's going to be a success. What about the whole idea of playing with something to see if it works? And if it doesn't, then that's fair enough. As long as we're mindful about it, then that's okay.
Yeah, it's that kind of, if you're designing something, if you want to invent a new thing, they almost never work the first time. They go through thousands almost of iterations before you get the thing that you're trying to make actually to work properly in the way that you want it to work. So why is it we, either we're scared to try in the first place? And sometimes that's about imagining, what could this be like? Because we've had this model of church for such a long time that nobody, even with the best will in the world, all that we do when we look around is we see variations of it. We don't even see, a new way of being. We see, it's got different music or better lights or, whatever that might be. But basically, church is church, and it follows a pretty similar kind of pattern and format. Now, some of that's for good reason, because that's, those, coming together for worship is really important. So we should do that, and that looks like what it looks like in your tradition, and there's some real richness in that and all that kind of stuff. But as you said, lots of folk have been in a church for a long, long time. I'm now minister in a wee village in rural South Lanarkshire, and loads of people have lived here for the whole of their lives, and so their experience of church is the one across the road. They occasionally have been somewhere else for a wedding or a funeral or a baptism, but the reality is most Sundays, they've been across the road, and so the only difference that they've seen is the ministers across the years, and even then, with the best will in the world, we're still singing 5 hymns, saying 3 prayers, and there's a sermon in the middle. So it hasn't changed a huge amount. So one of the questions that was always around when this happened, particularly when lockdown happened, and it seemed as though we were going to stop, so everything stops, The big question is, well, what happens at the end of it? What starts again at the other end? We get this new normal nonsense that kind of comes out of that. But within that, there's a hope that things could be different. So have you seen some of that reimagining, or are you seeing a kind of impatience just to get back to normal, or a bit of both?
I think early on, there was definitely impatience to get back to normal. Now that we're 9 months along the road, I think there is a real awareness that going back to normal is not ever going to be the way forward. And, certainly centrally, we have been pushing our evangelism and growth strategy, which is all about reimagining what church looks like. Not for those who are already connected, but for those who are not connected. How are we church? How are we the missional community that we're called to be, to connect with those beyond those that we're already connected with? How do we take good news out into the streets, into the schools, into the highways and byways? And, the Methodist Church have a tradition of Wesley being on his horse and travelling all over the place and preaching anywhere. And I've been reading some of his journals recently, and some of the stuff that he writes about it's classic comedy. And because he goes into the nitty-gritty about what it's like to be out spending time with people. It kind of reminds me of when Jesus sent out the disciples and said, spend time with people, find people of peace and stay a while, eat and drink with them. And so I think people are maybe reluctant. Some people are maybe reluctant. They know that there's changes afoot, and they maybe secretly hope that things will go back to normal. I don't think things were normal, Stewart, if I have to be honest. I just don't think, for me, things were not normal. I probably spent the best part of 2 decades asking, where are all the children? Why have we hemorrhaged children and young people? Why are they opting to do other stuff? Even if they're invited to do stuff with people that they know and they like and that are their friends, why are they opting to do other stuff? What is it that we're missing? And so for me, part of that has been about how hard it can be to really be rooted in a faith community, how to find your place and really belong. Because churches can be really cliquey places.
Yeah.
People move into a new area and they're looking for a new church, and it can be hard to settle and be part of that because you're not part of that historical narrative of that people. And you need to somehow connect yourself to that. And it can be really hard. And some people can be, a bit lacking in grace sometimes, particularly if they might be, feel that their toes are being stepped on. And sorry, the dog's just...
It's usually mine.
So that's a big thing for me. And if you don't have a culture of welcome, it doesn't matter whether you're doing a Sunday service, you're doing a fair trade breakfast, you're doing a kids club, it doesn't matter what you're doing, unless you've got that culture within your DNA of a people group to be noticing folk and to be really mindful of how you welcome and value them. It's just difficult to work, and sometimes there's so much going on in churches, and quite often, we all know that it can be often the same people doing a lot of the work. And when you've got that situation where everybody's kind of pedaling quickly, where is the time to stop and stand back and be really observant and mindful of who are the people round about us? Where is God prompting us to connect? That's a different kind of rhythm of church, I think. Yeah. Where you take the emphasis off the stuff and you're totally fixed on, why is this stuff important? Forget the how and the what and the where. Why is this stuff important? What does it mean for me as a person? What does it mean as a person in relationship with you as we do this stuff together? We might decide that we're going to meet every second Friday for prayer and to read a book together, and we do it in a cafe, and all of a sudden we're having conversations with people, and people might that's amazing, organic, relational kind of ministry, but it's long and it's intentional kind of friendship, relationship stuff. And I think we're so used to having church where we go, well, how many people are going to your small groups? And how often are we running an alpha course? And how many, we do that kind of analysis without getting the kind of qualitative feedback. We're talking just now about impact assessment.
Uh-huh.
How do we measure the impact of our learning activities or support? How do we measure the impact of that for a person or for a church or for whatever it is in relation to and the fact that a happy sheet isn't good enough anymore. Yeah, we came along, that was really nice, the biscuits were great, thanks very much, see you again 3 years time if it's safeguarding or whatever. The difference is, has this equipped you to do what you need to do the best way you can? And how else might we help you to do that? Are you making an impact? Are we impacting you? Are you making an impact through what you're doing? And I just think so many folk got so many hats to wear, but even the ministers sometimes, they don't get to that stuff that they want to be about, because they're having to do all this other stuff, manage the buildings, the roofs caved in, or I did a safeguarding course at the beginning of the year, and one of the chaps on that, a phone call, oh, there's something just come through the roof and there's water pouring in, and that's the reality of stuff. And I think people were scared to begin with, that they were losing that physical space that they had, where they did a lot of their ministry. And now many are quite relieved that they're realising that the burden of having to cope with that has been lifted a bit. And it's given them time and space to kind of stand back and really think for maybe the first time in a while, because all that stuff takes up that time and space. And we kept talking about the time that's been created, not that we weren't doing anything, but it was a different time in a different context, so we could do different things. That's been really helpful. It's helped people transition through those kind of initial fearful times and wondering and waiting and thinking, what's this going to be like? And am I equipped for what might come next? And as we've walked with them, and I think there's been a lot of enjoyment and impatience in a sense, but some of the fear has changed to excitement. Uh-huh. And a real realisation that, we are going to be operating differently. We are talking about not just church planting, we're talking about digital church planting.
Yeah.
So we've not just taken 1 or 2 steps, there's been lots of steps that I think we've been pushed towards, that otherwise people would still just be sitting chatting about.
Yeah, because that sense of time, you said earlier on that one of your responsibilities was to encourage things like pioneer ministry. And, that's brilliant. It's great. When on earth have I got the time to do that? It takes all my time to do this.
Exactly.
And so this is, I hope, giving us at least a bit of breathing space if we've taken it. And I think that's a whole different conversation about people that have just filled their time with busyness all the time. Mm-hmm. Because we do like a crisis. That the church is good at crisis. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. I think, I was listening to you there saying about, the ways that we've noticed people that we maybe haven't noticed before, all that kind of stuff. And, we've done the same. We, across the kind of the time of lockdown, we were helping people to get food and prescriptions and, all that kind of stuff. And now we're collecting Christmas gifts and food and all, and it's amazing. People are incredibly generous and all that stuff, but people were poor last Christmas. Why is it taking a pandemic for us to notice that? is the case. These people have had to use food banks for years. They're not, and yes, there are some new people that have sadly found themselves in that situation. But the reality is, our community hasn't changed that much. Why have we not been engaging with these people anyway? And some of it's just about we were far too busy just getting on with life that we didn't have the time to sit and look around and think, oh, hold on a minute, nobody's doing that.
Absolutely.
I've got some time now, I could do that. And it doesn't need me as the minister to do that. My job mostly over, the whole time I've been doing this, but particularly in the last 9 months, is to say, that's a really good idea, you should totally do that, and I'll support you in that. Rather than me saying, there's another thing I could be really busy doing, and I'll do it.
Yeah. I love the idea that within church that we kind of honour people who serve in different ways, but it's always been a bit of a bugbear that we're not so good at creating a platform for people to share what they naturally are doing in their everyday life, in their families, in their communities, in their sport and recreation, in their workplaces or schools. How do we make space for them to go, do you know what, this is what I'm doing, this is what I think God's doing, do you want to come and join in with this? That's ministry. We're so, and I don't know if it is a Scotland thing, or I don't know if it's within particular denominations or churchmanship, but we can be so used to waiting for somebody to say, let's go and do such and such, or who wants to volunteer for this? Why do we need volunteers? I often say to my kids, the dishes have been piling up now, is anybody going to do them? And they'll be like, oh, can you not do it? Well, we're all in this family together, which means that everybody just mucks in. When there's no a volunteer rota, and mum and dad are on the rota more often than ever. It shouldn't be like that. If we're family, then it should be about how do we do this stuff together. And I suppose that's one of the ways that's one of my kind of default places, that to me church needs to be like family, because we need to be up close and personal to do the kind of stuff that we do well. It's not like a business. There's definitely parts of what we do that needs to be very business-like and professional, and we should be gleaning all the stuff from the business world about management and leadership and all that kind of stuff. But at our heart, we're a missional community, we're families on mission. So I love the idea that church is much more about drawing in everything that we are and celebrating that as our ongoing worship, rather than we culminate it, for this time and we do that thing. But we've been conditioned to do that. Yeah.
You talk a lot about family, and it's great. And over the past however many hundred years it is that we've known each other, you mentioned it earlier. You've been a passionate advocate for the place, particularly of children and young people in the church. That this idea that we sideline them, we ignore them, we almost teach them out of coming to church. Because we send them away rather than including them. We don't listen to them. We don't, all the things that have become fashionable, which is nice because eventually somebody's maybe starting to listen. But you've been advocating all this stuff for years and years and years. Has the last 9 months been good for family ministry, do you think?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So I think, we've been influenced in the church for a long time on the place of children is about educating children. And I don't know how folk would view their own engagement in church. Is it primarily to worship? Is it primarily to learn, to be educated? Is it primarily about Christian fellowship? What is it about? But a lot of what's influenced work with children has been about educating. I mean, discipleship has been understood as educating. To go back to the old kind of ragged school movement, Was it discipleship? Was it education? Was it social action? Well, there was a need. There were children who were hungry and uneducated, and there was action taken to respond to that, which probably did all of the above. And I think we've continued that kind of educational model. We use the language. We dismiss children to go to their classes.
Yeah.
Now that's educational language. If we're talking kind of biblical language, we would use terms like "we send you," and so we've done children a disservice by taking them from a worshipping community and putting them into an educational context in church. Even the terminology Sunday school. If it's about schooling people on a Sunday, then Sunday school needs to be for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Worship and education need to be two sides of the same coin. Evangelism and discipleship need to be two sides of the same coin. So I think what we've been discovering during this time is lots of things, but first of all, you can't effectively engage with children in this platform unless you're engaging with responsible adults. And there is the basis of effective ministry. Ministry needs to be across generations. Who are the experts in this time we're living in dealing with the multitude of digital platforms? Well, young people. They're the digital natives. They've grown up with this stuff. They cannot believe we grew up in a time where we didn't have a mobile phone or online gaming. It's like, what is Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Well, Wi-Fi is on the bottom rung of ladder now. And so they have got so much to teach us. They are comfortable dabbling in so many platforms at the same time. They can be on their phone, watching a movie on TV, playing the Xbox, and have something on their tab. That's just what they do. They communicate in so many levels at the same time. They're kaleidoscopic in terms of how they engage. Adults, we're just like, we need to be, just give me one thing to focus on. Just give me one, I can only concentrate in one conversation. That's not what they do. And in terms of child development, that's what toddlers do. That's how toddlers learn. That's how they learn to communicate and have relationship and whatever. They've got this kind of kaleidoscopic view of stuff. That's why when they're sitting really focused on something and you're having a conversation and that's repeated by them when you don't want them, that's what they do. They pick up all this stuff from all these different things that are going on. And we lose that as we get older. But, children and young people are still able to do that stuff. We are not. We need simple stuff. So they've got a lot to teach us just now. They have the upper hand, I think. They are not scared by this stuff. They've explored it. They've discovered how it works. And we're even at the tentative exploring kind of stages. I have not discovered all the stuff that I could be using for my job right now. Never mind anything else. I have not discovered all these things. We started off talking about Zoom and Microsoft Teams and a few other things. And we're now talking about loads of different things that we can use online for learning. And it's just like, slow down. And of course, my kids are going, yeah, I know about that. Yeah, I know about that. So there's such a lot to teach us, I think. But they weren't the first place that we looked at for help. We didn't go to the teenagers and say, how do we do YouTubing well? What do you like about YouTubers? Yeah. We didn't do that. Yeah. We just went, we need to do this and it's really scary and we better try. And I just wish we had gone, okay, over to you. We are taking a bit of a rest. Show us how we do this stuff. Well, how would you do it? I wish we had kind of done that. And there probably are examples of where that's happened.
Yeah. And even in that, I think what you do is, rather than ask somebody, you think, well, I'll go and look, right? So you go on YouTube and you think, oh my goodness, I'm nearly 50. I'm not doing that.
I'm not doing that. Uh-huh.
Or I'm not going to speak like that, or I'm not going to, why do they keep asking you to, like and click the bell and all that? That's really annoying. But then part of that's just a complete lack of understanding of what on earth is going on with this, how it works, and how many people are engaging with it. I think have kids watch YouTube now. They don't watch telly.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? So
my 3-year-old granddaughter, every time she walks in the door, Gran, please may I have a tablet to watch YouTube?
Yeah.
And they can use YouTube. They know how to buy applications.
Turn that off. Yeah, but we grew up in a, depending on how old you are, a 2 or a 3 channel world where children's television was on for an hour. And then, as part of a kind of wider, there were no channels, dedicated channels, and there certainly wasn't on demand or any of that kind of stuff. So we're kind of used to that programmed life. If you like, that, church happens at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, well, that's okay for us because that's how we process the world. We have calendars and, we wear watches and things like that. Kids don't wear watches.
They don't. And they ask why all the time.
Yeah.
Why do we need to meet at 11? Why can we not meet at 8:30?
Yeah.
Why do we not have food?
Yeah.
Or why does it smell like that? Or why do we need to sing that? Or why?
Yeah.
And for me, those why questions are so important because we can work out the what and the how.
Yeah.
And sometimes the what and the how becomes the default.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually lose sight of what is the why. Why is this important in the first place? What is it we're trying to achieve?
Yeah.
We just go to the how. This is how we've done it. Why do you do that? Well, this is just how we've always done it. And I'm sure you'll be the same. You get to the point where you think, I'm fed up hearing that this is how we normally do it. Why do you do it like that? Well, I don't know. Well, if you don't know there's something flawed in your thinking and your practice, let's take a step back and actually engage with this stuff. And I think the other thing about what's been happening during this time is that we've naturally discovered the kind of normal flow of family life when you've got a group of mixed ages together. Different people of different age and different experience and expertise and knowledge will bring different things. And so the children might be really comfortable to engage online and these kinds of platforms, but they need the parents often to set the hardware up and whatever else, so there's that going on. And there needs to be kind of safety boundaries and whatever else. In a church situation, a typical Sunday at church, adults take responsibility for organising, for looking after safety, etc., etc., etc. And sometimes things are done to the children rather than with them, or they're done for them and with the best of intentions, but the adults always have the kind of power. And I loved, in a local church context, I loved working with children in a way that was quite organic, and we would always be asking questions. What do you think about that? I wonder why that happened that way. I wonder how people felt about when that happened. I wonder to kind of affirm children that actually the Bible was not this scary book, but actually it was about real people and real places and real stories and real songs and all sorts of things that they could ask questions about, even difficult questions, even questions that adults can't answer. And I remember, one of the ministers I worked with, when I said, why don't you come and just experience what we're doing and be part of the way, oh no, children are too scary. What if they ask something that I can't answer? Well, why do you need to answer it? Well, I'm the minister. They expect me to. No. And so I've been watching this kind of emerge in the digital world where families are engaging together and churches are learning how to kind of harness that. It's almost like, I've always said intergenerational is, it's not the only model that we should be looking at as how we gather together, but certainly for for corporate worship, it needs to be happening. And I think, although it's maybe been hard for folks, or they've maybe been a bit reluctant, they're actually seeing firsthand how this is working in this world.
Yeah.
You know, and how they can't get away from working intergenerationally with children. You know, you can't really do online church with 3-year-olds on their own.
No.
So what are we trying to do? Why are we trying to do it? What does it look like? How long does it need to be? You know, all these things are being thought about. I wonder, Stuart, if we've thought we've understood the answer to those questions previously, so we just keep regurgitating the same stuff, and we don't often stop to evaluate ministry. A long time ago, I've written a piece of work for a church to do with kind of planning and strategy, and the minister said to me, "Well, we don't want to be doing that. That's too much like measuring ourselves." You know, "Oh, that's too hard. That's like judgment. You know, what if we don't like it?" Well, actually, that's okay. That's okay.
That's okay. And the reality is that we measure ourselves all the time.
We do. You know, we're in a culture of that.
Yeah. I mean, we every denomination asks for statistical returns every year. You know, we count the number of people that come, we count the number of people that go to organisations, we count the number of, you know, the amount of money that we take, you know, all that. We count stuff all the time. You know, so that kind of sense that, oh, you know, we're scared of measurement. It's like, well,
yeah,
get a grip. You know,
I know.
You know, we measure it all the time. We maybe measure the wrong things, but you know, but we're not afraid of counting.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Which is one of the things that this whole being online has opened up. You know, a whole new load of metrics for folk that you can see just how long folk watch your service for, and it's not very long, and it's not very good for your ego. You know that 4 seconds in, 40% of the folk that are watching are gone. You know,
but what are we learning? You know, about communication. You know, how many books have you read on preaching or communicating a message?
None.
And you know, they talk about things like, you know, have one key point and talk about that key point, and then remind people you've talked about that key point. And still, you know, people churning out 3-point, 4-point, 7-point sermons. Sometimes you think, okay, well, that was long. I can't remember anything. And here we are realising that we're not just guessing at this stuff. The stats speak for themselves. Yeah. We can analyse all the different social medias, who's using them, when they're using them, who's engaging with what we're putting up. And that's, for me, that's really helpful if you're open to seeing that as a tool to better your communication with the world around you. Yeah.
It just presents in a graph what you see in front of you every week and process subconsciously. So, you know, the last time I looked at I think it's Facebook gives you the breakdown of users kind of thing. So that, you know, I'm big with women over 65. But I knew that already because our church is full of women over 65. Do you know what I mean? So actually what's happening is the congregation are watching on a Sunday. You know, that, of course, that, and the, you know, the curve goes like that because that's what the curve goes like in almost every church in Scotland. You know, that churches are full of older people, and you know there are some folk in the middle, and there are very few folk in that 20 to 40, 50 age group now, and then there's kids who are sometimes involved but sometimes not, you know, and are sent off to do their own thing or whatever it is that we do to them. But just to be presented with that as a graph, you can think, I wonder if there's anything that I can do that turns that the other way round or brings up the front half of the graph. You know, how do you engage with people in their 20s? Is this even the right platform? You know, are folk in their 20s on Facebook?
Yeah.
Probably not. You know, but so I need to go and learn TikTok. Really? You know, and some of that's just about, you know, I don't know if I've got the headspace to go and learn about that. But if I want to engage with people who are not on Facebook, then that's where they are at the moment. So, you know, am I saying that I'm not going to go somewhere just because it makes me feel uncomfortable, which is, you know, it's the same thing that we do in real life. You know, we look at streets around us and think, I'm not going up there at night. You know, I might meet people who are difficult, you know, and so we end up with a church that's full of nice middle class people because, we're not very good at difficult folk, because they might ask us hard questions, or they might ask something of us that we don't know the answer to. That kind of...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think as well, one of the things that I've seen is that people have been honest about their reluctance, not for things to change, but their reluctance to be part of stuff themselves. They don't want to hinder things. There's been a real kind of openness to saying, I'm not in a place where I can go and do TikTok, or I can do this and I can do that. But I really appreciate the fact that that's where we need to be going to. And so they might not be, in person able to contribute to that, but they're very much at the back going, come on, get on and do it. Use you guys that can do it. And that's great. Even the awareness that, we do need to transition to new ways. And I've been amazed, Stewart, we had conversations at the beginning of lockdown about the numbers of people who were in congregations who were not digitally informed, and probably wouldn't even have a smartphone, never mind, a tablet or a laptop or anything. 9 months in, that has changed.
Yeah.
So for those who really want to get in on this stuff and participate, they're making it happen.
Yeah.
And who's helping them? Their kids and their grandkids.
Yeah.
I have a lady that I work with quite a bit just now, and she'll say, my grandson's left me notes to, how to do this and how to do that. And she had worked out by reading stuff online and asking help from him how to embed videos from YouTube into PowerPoints. And, so things are happening.
Yeah.
I think there is still this kind of at the back of people's minds, it would be so nice if it just went back to normal.
So much easier. I think that's but that is, there's a reality in that. I was thinking, like, up this morning, I thought, all right, I'm quite busy for the rest of this week because we've got a thing on Sunday afternoon as well, right? So that then means, well, actually, I've got 2 services this week, so that means twice everything. And in real life, that would mean writing 2 things and rocking up and speaking for a bit.
Yeah.
But that's not what it's like now. In real life now, that means writing it, filming it, making sure that that's worked, editing that properly, fixing the sound because that never works, putting stuff on at the beginning and the end, and adding in bits from other people and all that kind of, it's a much, and then worrying about whether or not it's going to work and when it's going to upload and all that kind of stuff. So there's, the whole process has been elongated, there's a whole load of stuff in that that's really good. But learning new things and being able to include lots of visual stuff that we maybe don't include previously, using different kinds of music and all the kinds of stuff that frees you up to do. But at the end of the day, it's going to take me ages, and I'm going to have to work really hard tomorrow because I still haven't written a sermon yet, and it's Thursday. And and so I suppose one of the things that we're really bad at is saying to other people, do you think you could do that? So we talk about, children and young people being involved in worship. I don't need to go to TikTok. There's a whole load of folk that are already there. And, just as you said about living out your life, living your faith in the community that you're in, they're already there.
Yes.
What I need to do is help them to understand what that is and where they are and what they're doing, and how their faith then impacts on their experience of TikTok or gaming or, whatever it is that they're doing. Why do we always see it as I need to go there and do a thing? You talked about Jesus sending out his disciples. He said, right, you lot, off you go.
That's it, yeah. You've spent time with me. I've shown you how to do this stuff. You've practiced it. So come on, get on and do it.
And you'll get it wrong, and some people won't like you, and that's all okay. Just keep going.
And I think it comes back to this whole idea that we feel that if we don't do it and we don't do it right, we're going to be judged.
Yeah, I'm totally there. That's I like not to be a control freak, but I totally am. so all of the visual stuff that goes out, I want to do it because I want it to be right. And, I try really hard not to do that. And there's folk that are much better at it than I am. But I want to do it. And I want it to be mine.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I do. I get that. It's just there in the church culture, I think. Yeah,
and part of that's because somebody's told me at one point I'm the expert. They train you to be the expert, to stand at the front and to, you're supposed to know this stuff.
Yeah, it's your show, it's your ball, so, you need to do with that as you've been entrusted with. And yeah, it's hard, I think. It's hard, particularly, as you say, you've got umpteen other things on. And there's probably people who are sitting going, well, I could have done that for you.
I could do that, yeah. Yeah, and some of them are 12.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And some of that, there's a kind of pervasive thing. We had a conversation this morning at prayers about this week's gospel, which is John the Baptist, and it's John's testimony about Jesus. So we were talking about testimony. What does it mean to tell somebody about Jesus? And I said that for me, that's still the most difficult question. That somebody says to you, so who is this Jesus? And what we do is we launch into this kind of, Jesus is the Son of God, and it's almost this kind of creedal statement thing that we do about a kind of historical context and a spiritual and all that kind of stuff. And what we never do is say, let me tell you about who Jesus is to me, because that's what those disciples were sent out to do. They weren't out to give some kind of theological treatise about who Jesus is in time and space, and had got a relationship with God and explained the Trinity in less than a sentence and all that kind of stuff. They went out and said, look, we've met this guy and he's changed our everything about us. And one of the things I love about working with children and young people is that's what they do.
Yes.
They just talk about how Jesus is important to them and how that is. And as we get to be adults, we start to, we read books and think it's all academic, in the kind of sense of the kind of, it's a theory instead of it being a kind of reality.
I'm reminded of a story actually of a young girl. We were doing the story of Zacchaeus, and it got to the point where I said, I wonder who you might be in this story. And she turns, there was loads of kids there, but she turned, she went, Jesus, obviously. As adults, we would never say that. We would always say Zacchaeus because he was the person that got things wrong. But she was like, obviously it must be Jesus. Is that not who we all want to be? There's your deep theological reflection right there in a 5-year-old.
Yeah. But you're right. As an adult, you would never say that because we don't get to be Jesus. We spend all this time talking about wanting to be like Jesus, but we would never say it because either we're too proud or we're too whatever. Yeah. We just don't see ourselves as worthy, so we identify with the other person in the story. Yeah, I'd be the tree, I think.
Yes, I'd be the tree.
That's it. I'd be the kind of inanimate object in the whole thing.
I'm sure there'd be loads of children that said that as well, actually. Yeah. But
it's a brilliant process to go through. I need to tell you this because I think of all the people I could tell this story to, you're one of the ones that would appreciate it the most. My dad used to have 3 churches, right? So I was doing a supply for him one day. So he was off and I was doing these 3 churches. So I took a box, right? So the kind of gift wrapped box, right? And I sat it on the communion table in each of the 3 churches before the service. And in one of the churches, like everybody before the service, they were all wee churches. So everybody before the service, what's in the box? What's that? So it's part of the service. What's in the box? And at one of the churches, a couple of folk asked, and at the other church, nobody asked. Right? So three of these churches, and then as part of the service, so what you can have today is I can open the box and show you what's in it, or you can have a sermon. You choose, and we'll have a vote. Right? So the first one, everybody wanted to see what was in the box. The second one, it was kind of 50-50, and the last one, nobody cared. They were like, what are you talking about? We're not interested in the box. We're not here for this nonsense, whatever the nonsense is. And what was in the box was basically a godly play story, so it was the unpacking of the story. But it was fascinating to see how adults responded to that. And we did the story in the first place, and we sort of did it in the second place, and I preached a sermon in the third place. because that's what they wanted, and they never found out what was in the box. And I just thought it was fascinating to see, these three different groups of adults respond in the way that adults respond. Sometimes we're really curious. Yeah. Sometimes some of us are curious and some of us can't be bothered. And sometimes we're just kind of like, just tell us, we're not actually that interested anyway. Just tell us.
And that's one of the big differences, isn't it? Because with children, they're like, don't just tell us. We want to experience this stuff. Yeah. We want to explore this stuff. Yeah. And often adults are like, yeah, well, I know what you're going to tell me, so just hurry up and get on and tell me. Yeah. There's something about the awe and mystery that children carry that we somehow forget or squeeze out when we're adults. That we're skepticism comes in and all sorts of things, and children carry that stuff with them. And for me, that's one of the reasons they need to always be with us, because they ask the hard stuff. They remind us of the magical stuff. When at one point when I was expecting our third child, I'd been told that the pregnancy wasn't going to continue, and I was quite upset about it. And our daughter, who was 8 at the time, asked me why I was upset, and I kind of explained it to her, and she went, "But Mum, those are just doctors, they're not God." And in that moment, there was just a reminder about, come on, okay, so this is how it looks. It ended up they were wrong, and we had that baby and everything was fine. But there's something about the faith and the wonder of children that helps to move us into a place. But sometimes
we see all the time, don't we? If there's an argument going on and a child wanders into the middle of it, everything stops. Mm-hmm. The children just change how we perceive the world, and what it's why it's the trite story about children in the Bible. But Jesus, the kid wanders into this scenario, and the adults are like, "No, send them away, send them away." Yeah. No, don't send them away, because if we don't have a conversation where they're included, then we're not having the right conversation.
I think so. I really do. I think so. It's it touches every area of church life. If we are families on mission, if we are church community, then to be part of that community means that you are part of being a worshipper. You are part of being a disciple. You are part of being an evangelist. You're part of responding to the needs of the world around you. And we've seen through young Greta, there's a child leading the way, and taking a bit of stick in some quarters, but there's somebody going, "No, wait a minute." So for me, church needs to be, all areas have access to children as far as I'm concerned. I wonder what church would look like if we had young people sitting in some of our committees making decisions. Because we talk about discerning, let's discern together. How much of that is discernment, and how much of it is, well, I've got a seat at the table and a bit of power to speak into this, and I think it needs to be like this.
Yeah.
When we bring children into those kinds of places, and they don't have all the facts, and they don't have all the years of experience behind them, sometimes they just say it like it is, and it's profound. But it's a bit risky making space for that.
Yeah.
But maybe we're learning to be a wee bit better at being risk takers.
I hope so.
I hope so.
Sounds like a good place to finish up. Lorraine, thank you so much for your time and your insight. It's always great.
Thank you. It's been lovely to chat to you, as always.